Hello, this is Donna Marie, and welcome to the Best Life of Wellbeing podcast. Please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so that you know when new episodes are available. Please like our content if you find it valuable and talk to us in the comments. We want to hear from you. We want to know your thoughts, answer any questions you might have, and any concerns. Welcome to the Best Life of Wellbeing podcast, designed to encourage you to embrace your whole life by focusing on your end of life and your overall well-being. My name is Donna Marie, health coach, yogi, and death doula. And today we're asking the question, can I grieve? And to answer that question, we have Ebony Gibson here, grief specialist and CEO of Can I Grieve, LLC. So Ebony, welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited about this conversation we're getting ready to have.
So am I. But before we get started, can you just share a little bit about who you are, where you were born, where you live, and whatever else you want to share about who you are yourself?
Yes. So my name is Ebony Gibson. I am 29 years old. I was born and raised in Maryland. I've lived here my whole life. I've moved to Virginia a few times, but that was for college and work. The majority, I reside in the PG County area. Went to college, got my bachelor's degree in communications at Virginia State University. From there, I got a good government job, so I did that. That was great. And then I just realized I needed more growth, and I'm an entrepreneur by heart. My dad has owned his own business or been in entrepreneurship for almost 20 years now. So I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so fast forward, I want to say less than 6 months of me graduating from college in 2016, my mom had passed. In 2017, it was actually 2 days before my 23rd birthday. And it wasn't anything that I had knew about, anything that I could have possibly prepared myself for. And I had never lost anyone to grief before. And so with that experience, a few years later, we had the pandemic and just different things were transpiring in my life. And I decided in October of 2021 to start Can I Grieve? And so it was inspired by the personal loss of my mother, some other losses I experienced in the pandemic. And the company was really created to inspire, to encourage, to educate, and to equip people to rise above grief. And so that's a little bit about me. I also got engaged back in February, so I'm excited about that. And I have a bonus daughter and a little brother and little sister. So I got my hands full.
Yes, congratulations on the engagement and all the work that you're doing. And 29 years young, I would say, because you're certainly not old. You're, compared to me especially, you're a baby. And so I admire the fact that you have taken the opportunity to help others through entrepreneurship. So congratulations on that as well. Entrepreneurship takes a whole lot of courage, because what you're doing is really helping the community.
Yes.
So
and needed.
Absolutely, it is needed, because many of us today, we go through situations and we don't really deal with them.
Right.
We what are we taught in society? Suck it up and drive on. There's so many messages. People, tell you to, get over it. I've even had a conversation with one medical doctor who said to me that grieving is supposed to be healthy when it's within a 1-year period. And I'm like, how do you put a time limit on
who said
somebody
that?
grieves? I'm like, these are the statements that are being made that create problems for people.
And misdiagnosis.
Absolutely. You tell me about your background in studying grief.
Yes. So I have a certification in bereavement ministry. I also went through a support group through my church. And what I found is quite a few churches actually offer this program through the church. It's called Grief Share. Not sure if you've heard of it or not, but most churches offer it. It's a program and a curriculum already created, and volunteers just facilitate the group. I also am working on my grief certification. I should be done with that this week. I attribute all of my success to God, obviously, because he's the author and the creator of everything. But there's my favorite scripture, Jeremiah 29:11, and it talks about the plans that he has for us, plans to prosper us and not to harm us. And so that's something that I really hold on to. And even me going through the support group with the church, it gave me a better understanding about how God relates to death and how it's okay for us to process death. And that's kind of where my teachings come from. And then, like I said, obviously all of the good values that my mother instilled in me, that plus my training is what I kind of use to educate people about grief and connect with them.
I believe, and you tell me what you think, I believe a person who has gone through their own processing of grief are the better teachers of grief, or the better supporters of people who are grieving. I also believe that we grieve in many ways, and we never talk about those ways. I'm a single parent, and I have an empty nest. And when my last child left, I went through a grief process. Although I will say, I went through anticipatory grief even before,
right,
and thought that I would be ready when the last child left. And then the grief process really started, because I thought I was preparing myself, but we are never prepared, prepared for death. Even if our loved one is terminally ill and we know it's coming, we don't know when.
That's so true.
And we're never prepared for it. And so can you share just a bit about your own processing of grief after your mother passed away?
Yeah. And so for me, I was blessed and lucky to have a great support system. And so my friends and my family, they really stuck by me. I know they talk a lot about how once the funeral is over, people start to become distant, or after the years go by, people go back to their normal life. But in my case, I didn't really experience that. Even to this day, I get a lot of support when it comes to my mother. And I don't even think it's just, because of the loss. I think it's because of who she was to people as well. Yeah. And it speaks a lot, because even at her job that she hasn't been at for years, they still celebrate her and do things to honor her. So I think it goes back to who she was, right? Like you said, nobody could ever prepare you, whether you knew about, the loss or not. And in my case, I didn't know anything. My mother wasn't sick. She just had turned 50 years old. She was healthy. We literally were watching the Super Bowl the day before she passed away. And so once she passed, I had a lot to do. I'm the only child. So thankfully, like I said, I had a support system. So my family, they helped me through that process. I had a lot of growing up to do. I always say I'm more advanced than my peers, because most of them haven't experienced what I've experienced yet. And so I had to grow up a lot faster, dealing with now a home. I now have to manage a home, something that, I planned on doing eventually. But at 23 years old, I had to take over my mother's estate and different things like that. And I just had to learn how to navigate life without a mother, something that I had never knew before. And so I never went to therapy. I don't knock therapy, but I just didn't feel that I needed to go through that. And, it's a journey. We're in the 6th year, almost 7 years of her passing. This last year, I decided to go through a support group, something that I never, had any intentions to do, but my church was offering it. And like I said, it was amazing, because I got to really understand how God perceives death and how we, should in turn perceive death and grief. And my journey has looked different. Like I said, I've done a lot of self-education. I've gotten, the qualification to be a grief coach, and different things like that. But I agree kind of with what you said. The best teacher is experience, and I never knock therapists, counselors, or anything like that. But if you haven't experienced a death, you can't relate. I can share with you how I feel. You can share with me the education and the tools. But if you have not physically went through it, you just can't relate, And so that's one of the things that I'm not grateful to say I can connect with people with, but I have that connection, because whether, they lost their mom, aunt, uncle, friend, whomever, it's still just having that connection, like we both lost someone. Yeah. And the thing is, like you said, nobody grieves the same. So we could have lost the same person, but we're not having that same experience. But just to know that someone else has been through something similar, it's more relatable. You can be more relatable. So
You said something, God perceived death.
yeah.
Can you share a bit of more about what that means, God perceived? And so, yeah, just can you touch on that a little more?
Yeah, so in the Bible, there are a couple of scriptures. I think this one is Psalms 34. Like I said, don't quote me, but it talks about how the Lord is close to those who are brokenhearted and crushed in spirit. There's also another scripture where it talks about there's a time to mourn, to laugh, to be born, all of that stuff. And then there's another scripture where it talks about how God mourned the death of Lazarus, which was his friend. Mind you, he already knew, but ahead of time what was going on, but he still took the time to process and to mourn with the sisters. And so to me, that just speaks volume, because a lot of people, and myself too, I was angry at God. I didn't want to talk to him, didn't want to pray. But what I've realized along my journey is that whether I thought he left me or not, he was there the whole time. He provided the support. You know, even today, like people are like, you're so strong, blah, blah, blah. I attribute all of that to God. I don't know how I get up every day and put a smile on my face. All I can say is it's God, because it's not me. I don't have that power, you know, so it's something that he put in me. And so when I say how he perceives it, like sometimes you have to check your beliefs, because you may think like, why did God let this happen and this and that? But God is not a murderer. You know what I mean? Like if he allowed your child to get killed, if he allowed your mom to die, then you're basically saying he's a murderer, and he's not, right? And so, like I said, sometimes you just have to check those beliefs, right? And really get a clear understanding. Because when you go through a loss, unfortunately, sometimes your beliefs are different and they change. And so once you go through a loss, it's always good to check the facts and the beliefs after, to do an evaluation, just to make sure you're not putting thoughts in your head that aren't true, you know, and that could stagger your journey.
Yeah. How do you define grief?
I define grief, and some people may say it's like a textbook answer, but I define grief as the price that we pay for loving people, you know, but I also could say grief is disconnection, you know, that attachment is broken. So, yeah, disconnection. And just like I said, it's just a price that we pay for loving people, because we experienced this person and we love this person, and now they're now gone. We now are disconnected. We now don't have that connection, that physical connection anymore. So we grieve because we don't have it. It's a loss.
Yeah. And like I said, for me, grief is, you know, not just during death. It's in many areas of our life.
That's right.
And so it is about that lack of connection.
Yes.
It's also a natural process that we choose in many cases not to think about or to put off addressing. None of us are promised tomorrow. And we wake up every day taking it for granted in many cases. And I mean, I'm guilty of that as well. But it's a natural process. And so when we talk about the anatomy of grief, again, we're going through grief all the time. We went through grief, just not just through the deaths of COVID, but not being able to go outside was grief, right? Not being able to do what you normally did and being confined. That created grief for many of us. But on the flip side of that, it created an opportunity for us to actually spend time in silence and dealing with ourselves, focusing on the person in the mirror. And do you think that's kind of the processing of grief, just being able to be with yourself and consider what you're thinking and feeling? And what are your thoughts about that?
So grief is different for everyone. It will never look the same. Something that I always reference is grief is as unique as our fingertips. So no one person has the same DNA. No one person will grieve the same way. You may have had a similar loss or the same exact type of loss, but that process and that grief journey is not going to be the same. And so to me, I think healthy, when it comes to healthy grieving, is not suppressing your emotions. You know, they always say in order for you to heal it, you have to feel it. And so a lot of times people are like you talked about, we live in a bounce back society. So people say, I don't have time for that, or I don't want to deal with that, but that's unhealthy and that's not, you know, really helping you. And so it's good not to suppress your feelings. I think isolation is okay if you just need that alone time. You know, you don't want to be bothered, but I think when it goes for too long, then that's unhealthy. And so I think it's good to, you know, surround yourself around family and friends, people that love you, people that want to love on you. Another thing that I have always loved doing is writing, you know, journaling, getting those thoughts out. You may be not able to physically communicate how you feel, but if you have a journal, you can journal how you feel. You can also, you know, look at it as progress. Like 6 months from now, am I still feeling the same way I'm feeling? You know, so I think journaling is super healthy and great. But I also think, you know, therapy, if that's what works for people, is great. I've been in support groups. Like I said, I went through one through my church. I'm currently helping to co-facilitate one with Roberta's House, which is a nonprofit in Baltimore, and they do a lot of grief work and support groups. So I think that is healthy too, because it lets you know, you're not alone in this journey. And you can just hear from other people and just kind of have that support in community. I think it's also very important in the process. A lot of people think that in order for them to move forward, they have to let go. And I don't think you necessarily have to let go. I think you just have to adapt and adjust to this new norm. But it's also important to honor your loved one, that remembrance piece, because that's going to be helpful to you in your journey too. So celebrating birthdays, celebrating anniversaries, you know, keeping memories, create a memory box, you know, with their favorite sayings, favorite foods they used to make, recipes, just stuff that you won't forget. So I believe there's a lot of different things you can do, but I would say one of the most important things is to not suppress those emotions and to really get a hold of it. Because if you don't get a hold of it, eventually, you know, it'll show up in other areas of your life, like irritation and anger and just all these different things. And you're not going to be performing at your best ability, right? And it all comes down to, I never dealt with the grief, you know, but it'll catch up to you just like anything else. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It will catch up to you all the way down to the cellular level. So it impacts us spiritually, physically, creates disease in our body, creates all kinds of havoc in our body. And we are walking around dealing with that. It creates pain in your body as well. You know, sometimes pain and we're going to the doctor and we're getting pills, but in some cases it's because we've never dealt with whatever it is we're suppressing.
That's right.
You mentioned the word healthy. And so obviously a healthy way to grieve is to face it head on, really. I think it's so important to be able to have conversation. So being in community with other people lets you know that you're not alone in what you're experiencing. And though everyone grieves in their own way, in many ways we are so much alike.
Right.
Right. And so knowing that in a community environment is so helpful. And journaling is also, so healthy ways of grieving. You mentioned those, journaling, talking about it, being in community, and unhealthy. Just want to highlight these. Unhealthy is isolating yourself and choosing to bury those. Are there other unhealthy ways that you can talk about?
Yes. Shopping. I love to shop, but it can become unhealthy, you know, because it's like it's making you feel good for the moment, but in reality, it could be, you know, messing with your mortgage. You know, it's kind of like a casino. Like, you know how people get an addiction? It can become something like that, and ultimately it could mess up your finances. So just being mindful of how you cope. And so also like taking, you know, medications or turning to drugs to numb the pain. At the end of the day, once you do that, it's a temporary thing. Once you get that high, it's going to go away eventually, you know? And so just doing things that eventually won't bring you real relief, just temporary relief. I would say that's unhealthy. like I said, the shopping. I love to travel. And when my mom passed, travel was my escape. I travel, but I realized like I spent some money, over
Yes.
the years. So
Yes.
just trying to find healthy ways to express yourself, like we talked about isolation, obviously, the devil can get in your head and thoughts and all
Yeah.
of that stuff. So isolation is never great. Like I said, everybody's entitled to have that alone time, but after a while, like you can't just keep being in the house. I would say also like not moving your body. We carry stress in our body. So if we're not able to get out of bed or we're not able to go for a walk, like we're not doing our body any justice.
Yeah.
And we carry a lot. So headaches, all these different things, not getting rest, all of these different things, they play a part in your healing process, and they could either prolong it or they can push it forward. But at the end of the day, we have to make healthy choices. Because ultimately those unhealthy choices, they won't help us, right? They'll only hurt us. So
I tell people all the time that we are creators. And
yeah,
so when I lost my father in 2014, I went through a grieving process, but part of that grieving process was, like you said, creating a ritual or a way to remember him. And so I have an altar, and with that altar, it started with my dad's pictures, but then I realized I have so many other ancestors that I want to have on my altar so that I can sit and commune with them from time to
yeah,
time and
yeah,
honor them and put them on display. So when other people come in, they see my ancestors, right? And
yeah.
so that's part of legacy building as well, because as you stated with your mom on her job, they are still, you know, they still remember her. They
Yeah.
still acknowledge her presence. And so
Mm-hmm.
she left a footprint, and what you're doing now is partially in honor of your mother. And so
Absolutely.
that's part of the legacy building that we can do as creators. And
Yeah.
I think we lose sight of that because it hurts so much.
Mm-hmm.
Have you met people who just want to stay stuck in their pain? There are people addicted to pain and suffering, and they don't realize it sometimes. But when you become comfortable in that, it becomes what you know, and living
Yeah.
outside of that becomes very, very hard.
I would say it's obviously easier, right, to not do the grief work and to not want to move forward. Because moving forward takes work. Like anything in life, you want to grow, you want to elevate. It takes work. It's not just going to happen overnight. And so it's the same thing with grief. It takes work from you to recreate this life now without that person or that thing that you were attached to. Whether it's new responsibilities that you now have, new roles, whatever that case may be, it takes work. And so I do find, especially as I help with support groups, that some people, they just don't want to move forward, and maybe they think that's healthy for them. But it's not, and honestly, I just think it comes down to lack of education. But obviously, like you talked about being comfortable too. Like some people just want to be comfortable, where they are. And if that's how they choose to, remember their loved one, unfortunately, that's on them. But it doesn't do your body good. It
Right.
doesn't do your loved one any good. And like I said, ultimately, it just staggers the process as far as moving forward. And when it's kind of like when you don't forgive people, like you think that,
Hurting
you
them.
in control, like everything is going fine, but really, like you're not even living your best life,
Right.
because you haven't forgiven. And people think forgiveness is for other people, but it's really for yourself. It's for that peace. And so a lot of people have to do work, whether it's forgiveness, or guilt. A lot of people carry guilt how their loved one passed, or
Right.
guilt for things that they didn't get to do, things they didn't get to say, so that takes work for you to decompress that and say, hey, there's nothing I literally could have done about this, because guess what? I'm not in control of my life. Even though I think I'm in control of my life, I'm not. And some people don't want to face that reality that there was literally nothing you could have done if you said this. Like, it's just not, and that's why it's so important to, like you said, um, not take life for granted, because tomorrow is not promised to any of us. Even though we act like, oh, I'll be here tomorrow, next week, you really don't know.
Talk a bit about the services you offer. I know you have your Can I Grieve LLC, but you also have a Can I Grieve University.
Yes.
So tell me about this university you have and the services that you provide through your business and your university, or are they combined, or are they one?
They're combined. So I have Can I Grieve LLC, and then I have a trade name or DBA, which is Can I Grieve University. And so the university is kind of where we do the grief coaching one-on-one or in group setting. We also do vent sessions, because some people don't always want to keep going to something week after week. Sometimes people just need to release and keep it moving. So we have that as well. We also have leadership development, where we're talking about people who are in leadership positions, right? Really just helping them get a hold on grief and how to communicate. We also have community support. So we've worked with the youth. A lot of it has been volunteer, where we would do different things with the kids to help enhance their social and emotional skills. We've also done grief, like as far as having a discussion with the youth about grief, what it is. And believe it or not, like children experience grief too. It's just not at a higher level than an adult, obviously, because the understanding isn't the same, you know. So that's a little bit about that. And when I first started, I started off with products. And so that's where the LLC came from. And we were offering clothing, which I still do offer. And then we were also doing care packages that people can purchase, like Sorry for Your Loss, Thinking of You. And we would put different customizable ornaments or candles or mugs, with a picture and all of that good stuff. And that was going great, but I didn't feel like I was really hitting the mark. I felt like I was just providing products, and that's not what Can I Grieve was created. So I really had to revamp. And that's where the university came from, where we are really educating people. We're putting together workshops. We're doing events. We're donating to different causes. My mom passed. She had a heart attack, so I'm really passionate about donating to the Red Heart, the American Heart Association, during the month of February. I also have done some work with breast cancer awareness. So just doing different things like that, where we're really reaching the community and just giving back. But also, like I said, educating people, because obviously if you don't know, about breast cancer, et cetera, then you might pass away if you don't know. Same thing with your heart. If you don't know about pressure and different things like that, not just educating people about grief, but also diseases, especially in our community. And then we can educate people on our platform.
You mentioned something about services in the community, and I know you have an event coming up really soon. I think you mentioned two, though, but one is at a yoga studio. So I like that this isn't something that is traditional. This is a modality that helps people to manage their stress. The restorative yoga that you'll be doing during your training. And so it really helps with your ability to be still, get quiet, to focus, and to really hear your own thoughts. And Ebony Wheeler is an excellent facilitator, so I'm grateful that you're getting to partner with her. But tell me a bit about your role and it's going to be at the Mind Your Body Oasis Yoga Studio in Arlington, Crystal City, Virginia. But tell me more about this event.
So I am so excited about this event. It's going to be taking place on June 25th, which is a Sunday, I believe from 4 to 6. And so obviously I don't teach yoga. I'm not the instructor. And so I partnered with the young lady that you mentioned, Miss Ebony Wheeler, and she does all types of different yogas, but we talked about putting together an event, and the title of the event is Healing Your Heart through yoga, right? And so we will be doing a ceremony, which is something I had never heard of, but apparently it's some form of chocolate or something, and it's connected to some type of spiritual thing. And so we'll be doing a Keiko ceremony. And we'll be doing restorative yoga. So not the traditional yoga where people got to stretch and do all of this stuff. It'll be more relaxing. And then I'll just kind of cover grief, do a couple of journal entries to kind of get people to open up. And then we'll just kind of have a conversation and kind of just talk about grief, and we'll have like a release session, and then we'll get into the restorative yoga, but she's also doing sound healing as well. So again, I've never experienced that. So I'm so excited about that. And I'm just excited for the release that's going to take place, because some people really do need to release and they don't know how. And like you talked about, yoga has been very helpful to you and your journey. So I'm just glad that people will be able to just sit with their self and be able to release that stress and release those thoughts, because our mind is racing all day, every day. So to have this time where people can just be still and relax, but also get some healing and relief at the same time, it's just going to be powerful.
It will be powerful. You mentioned the types of services, but I know you have one-on-one services, and then you also have like an 8-week group
Yes,
type
yes.
of service. And then
Mhm.
you have the leadership where you go into corporate America or government agencies and help us to create empathy, really, is to
Right.
really care more about what someone else is going through, because we are also in this world, a lot of us so focused on ourselves and our own things, and that gets us in trouble with grief, because in many
Mhm.
cases we're thinking, oh, my loved one, my life,
Yes.
my. And so tell me more about the sessions. Like, what is in a one-on-one and kind of the structure of them both?
An individual session, we kind of really get to just focus on that one person. And we really just do a deep dive to try to figure out what's going on or what happened, right? Because obviously I don't know what happened. I know a loss has occurred, but we really digest it. So what type of a loss, um, how are you coping? Right? What are other people affected? Because some people have children and they could have been affected by the loss, and just different things like that. What are these new responsibilities that you have? And just really talking about moving forward. And that's the biggest difference between a coach and a counselor. We're not, as a coach, we're not here to revisit, what you did when you were 6 years old and who passed when you were 6. We really just focus on where you are and where you want to be. And so we're able to, once we figure out what has happened and how has it affected you and everyone around you and how you're coping, and we'll find out if you even know how to cope, if your coping skills are healthy. And then we'll then create a plan to help you get to where you want to be and to now recreate, this new life since your loss. So that would be individual. And then as far as group, I love group. Group was amazing, because it's not just me and one person. And you get to hear, like, it's crazy because, like, people are your best teacher, right? And so a lot of times they teach me things. I'm like, wow, I didn't even think about that. And so I just love the group thing, but it's similar work, just a little different, because in the 8-week healing journey, it's 8 weeks. Whereas individual, I'll do it as long as someone wants. I don't have like
Okay.
we're together for 4 weeks or 6 weeks, because like I said, everybody's different. You might want to be together for 10 weeks, 12 weeks. So I think that would probably be the biggest difference too. And so during those 8 weeks, we just take each piece, each week in a different segment. So the first week may be what is grief or introduction to grief. Then we're talking about managing grief. Then we're talking about the symptoms. Then we're talking about self-care and your thoughts and how your thoughts play a part, in your healing journey. Then we do affirmations and all of this stuff.
Your website, I thought I had this in my notes, but I don't have it. But you said something about life doesn't happen for us, it happens to us.
Mm-hmm.
And the way it's written, most people say life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us or something.
Yeah.
And so I want to understand what that means for you.
Yeah. So the quote that you were referencing was, I believe in life that everything that happens to us, it happens to us, but it's not for us. And so basically every experience that we have in life, good or bad, it's an opportunity to help the next person. And so the way that I equate my mother's death was, this just didn't happen to me for no reason. Granted, it happens to everyone. Everyone will eventually experience this, right? But I believe in, if it happened to me, it's a reason that it happened. And that's just the way that I decided to turn my pain into power or to purpose, you
Yes.
know? And so everything, like I said, in life, good or bad, we always have the opportunity to grow and to help the next person get through it, or we can, you know, just remain stagnant. But that's what I believe.
Great. I like that. I like
Yeah.
that. Thank you for sharing that. And you also said on your website is your greatest accomplishment thus far is seeing the lives of others being positively impacted by your
Yeah.
teaching and by giving back to the community. And again, I just want to say kudos to you for one. I talked about being a creator, and so you use
Mhm.
that quote to create the reality that you wanted from this, that
Yeah.
power with a purpose.
Hmm.
You created that, or you co-created that with God, because you didn't do
Right.
that on your own in your own
That's right.
power, right? Um,
Yes.
and so I'm so proud of the work you're doing. It's definitely necessary in our world today when we're on social media and for hours and hours and hours of doing nothing and mindlessly doing nothing and comparing ourselves to other people as a way to sometimes cope with our grief. It's an escape, and it could be social media, television, shopping, travel, like you said.
Yeah.
And so, just your message, can I grieve? That question, first of all.
Hmm.
And the message just helps to wake people up. I mentioned to you the doctor I spoke with about the time limit on grief.
Hmm.
Now, obviously, I don't think, for some of us, the grieving really never stops. There are times my father passed away in 2014, and there are times when I wake up and him not being here hits differently on certain days.
Yeah.
And so the grief for me is never going to go away. But what are your thoughts about there being a time limit, and is there a time or a phase or a period when people are grieving really hard where you think it's necessary for some other type of intervention?
I do not believe there is a timeline when it comes to grief. I just believe everybody bounces back differently. Everybody also doesn't have the same amount of support or the same level of education. You know, then there's things like how you grew up, and then there's religion. Like there's so many things that play a factor in, you know, how somebody is able to move forward and how they're able to stay stuck and stagnant. And so I personally don't believe it's a timeline when it comes to grief, because, you know, you can have what we call like grief spurts or outbursts, you know, or random moments. You know, grief can be triggered by anything. A
Yeah.
smell, that smell might remind you of your father's cologne or your mother's perfume. You know, even food, like you could be out at a restaurant, you're like, man, that reminds me of my mother's mac and cheese, you know, or even a song when you hear their favorite artist or that song, it just puts you in a space. So, and that's okay, right? Everybody goes through that. But I don't think there's a timeline like from today until next year today, a person should be over it. I don't believe that, right? Because some people, like I said, they don't even deal with it right away. Some people don't even have the opportunity or the luxury to deal with it right away. Some people have to go right back to work, or they're not able to feed their family. Some people have to do so much that they don't even have, like I said, that luxury to grieve right away. So then they have to prolong it, right? Because they don't have that. They have children, little babies. They have to keep going for their children. And so I don't, like I said, I don't believe that there is a timeline. I just believe after a certain period of time, if the grief isn't lessening, if you still feel the same way you feel when you first experienced that loss, or it's gotten even worse, then that's when I think you should go see a therapist, you know, or go see your doctor, or just find a community where you can get some clarity. Like, wow, there is other people going through it, but this is how they're dealing with it. Maybe I can try this approach, you know? So I just think after a period of time that it doesn't lessen. It doesn't, because I never think it gets easier. I just think we as people get better, right? And we adjust and adapt. But if it's just like it still feels like it just happened and it feels worse, then definitely I go speak to someone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you work with anyone else in the community to refer people to when they are struggling?
Yes, so I definitely always say Roberta's House. I don't know if you heard of them, but they are a nonprofit in Baltimore and they do a lot of support groups, which are free, I believe. Don't quote me on that. But I know they have a lot of things for the community, so I think that's always great. And like sometimes people have support groups here and there, but they always have support groups. I also know people in different fields. So some people may need help with their children. Well, I don't really specialize in children. I specialize in youth, but not necessarily individualized, sessions with children one-on-one. And so I will refer them to someone else, right? So it
Yes.
really just depends on what a person needs. I also always ask people like, are you feeling suicidal? Have you had any suicidal attempts and stuff? Because that is where I have to draw the line. That's where I cannot do the coaching. And that's when I really have to refer them to somebody else because that is out of my scope. So
There, how can people find you, your website, social media? How do we get in touch with you if we want to learn more about how to grieve?
great question.
Mhm.
And so the website is canigrieve.org. I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Can I Grieve. I'm trying to think, am I on any other platforms? I do have a YouTube channel. You should be able to just type in Can I Grieve, or if you go to the website or any of my social media handles, you'll see the YouTube in there.
I look forward to possibly working with you in the future. I'm sure as time goes on, I'll have some events where I'm hosting several people to talk about everything end of life, grief, legacy planning. And I would love it if you could join in a conversation in the future.
Absolutely, I would love it, and I'm looking forward to
So
it.
thank you, Ebony, so much for your time today. I wish you so much success with the work that you're doing. It's definitely needed in our communities and in our world. So I wish that this Can I Grieve University become bigger and bigger because we really do need this impact in our
Thank
communities.
you. And thank you for having this platform, so that we can have these conversations because, like I said, people don't always have help and have support. And so you facilitating these conversations and just creating something for your overall well-being is just amazing. So I'm grateful, to have had the opportunity to share some of my story and a little bit about our company. And you just continue to keep doing the good work that you're doing too.
Thank you so much, sis.